Lord, please daven for us all, but whatever. We all need the Yeshua. So have us all in mind.
Sure will.
When are you scheduled to arrive there?
Well, first I'm going to go to davening in the shul, then I'll go afterwards.
Oh, so if you'll be there around 9, so check in again around 9, so we can all daven together with you there.
Okay.
Okay, Gavalti. So we just finished up the Brisa that talks about the 10 different takanas that Yeshua built into the land of Eretz Yisrael when we moved in. We learned that that might apply in Bava, it might even apply in Chutz La'aretz. We discussed specifically the takana that you're allowed to walk along the edges of the road on private property when the road is very rough and the terrain is difficult to walk on. And be careful not to be verfrumt and don't take advantage of that unless you're reading on that madrega, because somebody who takes on chumras and he's not holding there gets put into chayim. There was a little bit of a discrepancy how many takanas were there, because the Gemara quoted 2 additional takanas that weren't listed, and that is you if your beehive, all of your bees went into someone's tree, you're allowed to cut the branch off his tree that contains your bees to take them back, and you just pay for the branch. Similarly, if you have a jug of honey that's cracked and it's leaking out, you can take someone else's jug of wine, which is worth much less, spill it out, and use it to capture your honey, and then pay the fellow back for his wine. We also had the issue of someone's truck broke down and he was transporting pisht on something that's very valuable. Somebody else had a good truck that was transporting wood. He's allowed to dump the wood, put his pishton on that fellow's truck. It's talking about a chamar, and pay for the value of the wood, which is much less expensive cargo. So these were all additional takanos that the Gemara quoted, that the Gemara answers by saying those were just said by Yechidim, they weren't Stam Mishnayos, and the Brisa that we quoted was only listing off the takanos that were Stam, meaning they're unanimously agreed upon. We also had Rabbi Yochanan quoted also a unanimous takana, anonymous and therefore unanimous, of even if your tree hangs over into somebody else's property or into Sarabim, it's all considered your tree, and therefore when you take bikurim from it, you could say Hadamash and Asatalu. So the Gemara ended up saying we actually have a machloikis amayroyim. Which takanos exactly are included in the group of takanos? Our original brisa was said in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who says there were 10 such takanos. Rabbi Yochanan might have had a different brisa that actually includes 11 takanos. And that was a recap of yesterday's Gemara. Now we're talking about the takanos of Ezra. Asara takanos tikein Ezra. Ezra was masakin 10 takanos. Number 1, shekarin b'mincha b'Shabbos. We lane Shabbos by mincha. V'karin b'sheni u'v'chamishi, and we also lane on Monday and Thursday. So these are 2 takanos, Shabbos and sheni u'v'chamishi. V'donin b'sheni u'v'chamishi. They paskin dinei Torah on Monday and Thursday. Those are days that are known to be Yom Hadin. Umechapsen b'chamishi, and you're supposed to wash your clothing on Thursday so that you could come into Shabbos with clean clothing, and that was I guess in the olden days where people might not have had separate changes of clothing for Shabbos. And you eat garlic on Erev Shabbos. The Gemara is going to explain each one of these takanos, what's the purpose. The day that a woman bakes her bread, she should bake it very early, or if she bakes daily, she should bake it very early. A woman should wear underpants. And before a woman toivels, she should comb her hair. That they should allow even peddlers from other cities to sell perfume in cities even though they're sort of infringing on the monopoly or on the market of the local peddlers, they should still be allowed to do that anyway. The tikkun tefillah levalakarian. He also is misakin that a balkari should type. So the Gemara goes through each of these takanas, item by item, what they're about. Number one, sheyukarin b'mincha b'Shabbos. The Gemara mishum yoshvei kronis. Yoshvei kronis aren't people who sit on the corner and waste time. Yoshvei kronis are people who work hard and have to be at work every day, and they're not able to attend the Besmedrash during the week. So at least on Shabbos, they should hear extra Kriyas HaTorah, as Rashi says, Yoshvei Chaniyah. These are people who operate retail establishments, that they have to be there all the time. They're busy with Parnasa, and because of that, they're not able to be in shuls on Monday and Thursday. Tikun beginayu kriya yasera. There was a special kriya made for them, maybe even to show honor to hardworking people who are showing Torah mitzvahs. V'shiyukarin b'sheni v'chamishi. Again, I have the liberty to say all these things now that my last daughter is engaged. So I have the liberty to say these things. That there's a tribute, there's a special Kriyas HaTorah for hardworking people. The Shiyukarin, the Sheni, the Chamishi. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's what I said. That's right. Retailers. The Shiyukarin, the Sheni, the Chamishi. Frank Gemara, Ezra TK. Is that Ezra's Takana? From day one. Since we got the Torah, we used to lay on Mondays and Thursdays. The Tanya we learned, and we know in my Torah, as we will soon see, and Darshe Rishumais Amru in my Torah, Shenemer Haikal Tzome Luchulamayim. Even Shalchu Shloishes Yom B'Lei Torah. Once they went 3 days without Torah, what does it say in the pasuk? It says the Nilu, they got thirsty. Nilu, they got thirsty. Meaning they had a chesed, they needed to learn Torah. Amdu Nevi'im shebeneim, the Nevi'im already from the time in the Midbar, long before Ezra, v'tiknu lahem sheyukarin b'Shabbos, they would lane on Shabbos, umafsikin be'echad b'Shabbos, on Sunday they would not lane, the karin b'Sheni, they would lane on Monday, umafsikin shlishi u'revi, they did not lane, the karin b'Chamishi, umafsikin erev Shabbos. Why? They should never be a period of 3 days without Torah.
There was no Torah when they left Mitzrayim and got to their first stop. So how can you learn something? They didn't learn Torah. Of course they didn't learn Torah.
Well, what did Yaakov learn in Shem V'Ever? In Shiva Shem V'Ever?
Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach.
So maybe that's what they didn't learn.
Okay.
It was boring laning. They laned the same thing every day. I don't know, but whatever it is, whatever their version of Torah was, they must have read.
Okay, that I could accept.
Zok the Gemara, Meikara Tiknu Chad Gavra Tlosab Suki. The original takana was to lane Torah, but it was just one aliyah, and that one aliyah contained all of 3 psukim. Inami Tlosa Gavri, or even if they had 3 aliyahs, Tlosa Psuki. So they laid 3 psukim, 1 pasuk per customer, Kenegat Kahanim, Leviim v'Yisraelim. But Ezra changed it also who Tiken Tlosa Gavri. We have 3 aliyahs, Vasara Psuki, and 10 psukim. Why 10 psukim? Kenegat Asara Batlanim. This is also a tribute. It's a tribute to every city that has a Rashi. Asara Batlanim b'nei Adam ksherim choshev people b'teilim imalachton. They refrain from being oisik and parnasa, lasik b'tzorchet tzibur, to focus on the needs of the community. And I'm sliding into the Bach. The koidvin lavoi leveis hakneses. They're always early in the basic knesses because they always want to make sure no matter when somebody needs to daven, there will always be a minyan available. Kedei sheyumitzuyin asara la'isat tefillah. So these are special people who sacrifice themselves to serve an important purpose, to ensure there's always a minyan. So as a tribute to them, we lane 10 psukim in our lane. Okay, Gavaltik. Now, we're supposed to. The whole purpose of these extra Kriyas Torah are so that we shouldn't have 3 days without Torah. So why is it that it's Dafka Monday and Thursday? They lane Shabbos. Why can't they lane Sunday? Why can't they lane on Tuesday? And then you'd solve that problem. And maybe Tuesday and Friday. Why Bedafka Monday and Thursday? And this is what Tosfos deals with. So Tosfos asks, the Medrash says, Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom Olav B'Chamishi Lakaber Luchas Achronos. The day that he went up to be Makabel the Luchas Achronos was on Thursday, V'Yored B'Sheni, and he returned on a Monday. V'Nisrat Salei Amokim, the ultimate Ritzui, where Hashem forgave us for the Egel, was during that period. Since that Thursday and Monday were very much in Eis Rotzon, Kavu B'Sheni V'Chamishi. That's why it was on Monday and Thursday, and this also explains with the Kach Nami Noagu L'Shanois B'Beis V'Hei, when they make Tanesim like Bahab, it's always on Monday, and a Thursday is a day that's focused as Yemei Rachamim, Yemei Rotzon. And now, and the rest of Tosfos goes into a long calculation when Moshe went up the first time, and when he went up the second time, and when he went up the third time, and depending on what the Rosh Chodesh was the first year, or if it was Sunday, or if it was Monday, it gets a little bit complicated. And Tosfos discusses did El have 30 days that year or 29 days that year to make it to work out that ultimately he came down on Yom Kippur. I think the third Luchas he came down on Yom Kippur, so that year Yom Kippur must have been a Monday. But that's what Tosfos. It's a very interesting Tosfos of someone that has time to go through to understand the dates of the days that he went up and he went down, and in order to adjust days one earlier, one later, Tosfos either had to say it was a month that was Moli when it should have been Choser, or Tosfos says maybe the same day he came down, he went back up, so it saves a day. But there's a lot of discussion about that. But the main point is Monday and Thursdays, Hashem showed us B'Shasta Egel are special days of Rachamim and Ratzon. Okay, Gewaltig. The Donen B'Sheni V'Chamishi. Why is it that the Bezdin convenes on Monday and Thursday? The Shchichi, the Asal Mikra B'Sifra, because people are around. They come to shul because there's a laning that day. So it's a day where anyway people are in the city. It's a convenient day to be able to have the Batei Dinim sit. See, it's a good television program we have going on here. Tosfos asks a very simple kasha. Ezra was masakin that Bezdin should sit Monday and Thursday long before there was a takana that every day Bezdin sits. So if anything, Ezra reduced the Bezdin. Zok Tosfos v'dan b'beis ve'evim timer b'alei koidim takanas Ezra hayu Bezdin kavun b'cholya kid amar b'ksubas im keina b'zoi matik and Ezra. If anything, he reduced it. The chitikin shaloyi kavun el b'beis ve'ei. Is that a takana that he reduced the hours of Bezdin? Yes, there used to be a Bezdin that sat every day, but that was only in one city. He was masakin that every city has to have a Bezdin that convenes on Mondays and Thursdays. Zog to Gemara weiter. We should eat garlic on Erev Shabbos, mishum oina, because it's helpful towards oina. Hashem will give us. It must be roasted garlic. It can't mean raw. It cannot be referring to raw
This
garlic.
sugi is sponsored by Listerine.
Mishamoina shemitzvus oina belela Shabbos k'Rav Yehuda v'ashum mar be'esazera kidla kamon. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean raw garlic. It means roasted garlic. Roasted garlic doesn't have the properties of to give you bad breath. From Rabbi Yehuda v'Tamer Rabbi Nachman v'Tamer Rav Kahana v'Tamer Rabbi Yochanan zeh hamashamish mitasei me'erev Shabbos l'erev Shabbos. Someone who's on Shabbos once a week, that's period yitem v'itay at the right time on Shabbos. I believe the Likutei Rashi says why erev Shabbos shuleil tainuk u'shvisa v'anosaku. It's a time to relax and indulge a little. Tanu Rabban, Chamisha Dvarim Nemru B'Shum. Garlic has 5 properties. A maspia, it satisfies you. When you eat it, you become satisfied. Umashrin, right? Mashrin means mechame mesaguf. It warms you up. Umatzil panim, I think it gives you a clear face. It makes your face glow, brightens your face. Umarba hazera, it's marba the zera. V'hayre kinim shebim. It's also very good to kill parasites in your stomach. I believe medically they say garlic is good. But yesh ayrim, you know what else it must do? Machnis ahava. It brings people together, especially the breath that it gives you. But Rashi is thank you so much. Rashi is machnis ahava. It's almost like a shot of cannabis. It relaxes you and makes you feel good and makes you feel happy. I only know this because I know how garlic makes me feel. And it stops kina. In other words, it probably has a calming effect on someone, so he's not bothered by small things, which brings people closer together because there's less things about each other that irritate. Rather, it sort of calms you down. Again, I don't know what the high of marijuana feels like. If anybody here wants to share with us if they find a similar feeling after they smoke marijuana to after they eat garlic, we're all ears. Just remember that you're on YouTube.
And I understand that it makes you mellow. I only know that from a few songs from the 60s.
Okay, so that's what it is. But one thing you do see that the Torah values a substance that can calm you down and make you feel good, but in small quantities at proper intervals. Okay. Why should she bake early? Klal Yisrael has to be built on chesed, and therefore it has to be ingrained in our schedule that we always have to make sure to prepare food early in the morning, so that first thing in the morning there's fresh mezainis and there's fresh bread to serve aniyim. I know there are people who are makbid every morning the shul should have tikkun. Maybe it's for that reason as well, so that all the guests that are in the Bishmeli should always be able to have fresh pastries. So you see that that's a Jewish, it's very much a Jewish principle, it's a Jewish meaning. That's pashut because it covers over areas that should be covered. It's tznius. That's not a college Ezra. That's the Raisehi. Because if there's a chatzitza, the tefillah is possible. The Tanya we learned, Barachas says besari b'mayim shelo yehi davar chaytzeitz ben besari l'mayim. First, there should be nothing that creates a separation between her skin or his skin and the water. And it says es besari. It doesn't say bisari. It says es besari to be marba es hatofel besari. Even something that's subordinate to the skin, umayni usar, that also cannot have a chatzitza between it and the water. Zok Gemara Amri Dairaisa liyune dilma miktar inami mos midi mishum chatzitza. Midaraisa, all you have to do is check to make sure there are no knots in her hair or there's nothing mias on her skin to make sure that that's not a chatzitza. But Ezra added at the kana v'asayu tika chafifa. He said you have to actually comb, which is leharchaka the milsa. That is playing it more safe. Instead of just checking, you have to actually comb, which will actually break up any knots in the hair. Why do we want peddlers running around the cities? We want women to be able to have perfumes and ways to beautify themselves and have a lot of supplies to beautify themselves. And therefore, we allow peddlers to come, even though the local peddlers would not want. I saw this in the Rishonim. Even though the local peddlers would not want, we encourage that there should be a lot of peddlers, and this way, things will be less expensive. We want to bring down the cost of cosmetics because we want to promote shalom bayis. V'tika and tefillah. There are some women who don't want to wear perfume. It's not a firm thing. You see clear from the Gemara that Ezra was masakin that cosmetics and besomim should be readily available to women to beautify themselves to their husband. I'm sorry? Well, that's exactly the point. And I'm happy you brought that up. Because when I had to take the Lakewood Bezin to the Torah, it was exactly that question, that we were bringing in goods from other cities that were of higher quality and of lower cost. The Chassam Sofer says, right on the Shulchan Aruch, the Pesach Tshuva brings the Chassam Sofer, who said, you look at the benefit of the 3 merchants that are in the city, maybe look to the benefit for the thousands of people that are in the city, that you're bringing them extra value that until today hasn't been brought for them. V'tikin tefillah l'balakarion, that's also Dairaisahu. Dichsev ishki seitze mimenu shichva zera, v'rachatzes b'sarei b'mayim. So Dairaisahu the truma of a kachim. The Dairaisa is before one can eat truma or kachim, one can be a balkari, one has to toivel. Also, hutiken afilu de Torah. If you're a balkari, you're not allowed to learn Torah only if you toivel first. As Rashi says, you should not learn Torah achi yitba. Before everybody closes the Gemara, let's quickly look in Tosfos. Also, iu v'tika nafilu de Torah. The Tosfos loy kaima lon hachi. We don't paskin like that. Ela Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira do Amar divrei Torah ein mekabel tuma kadama bereishis agez v'mishemesu ha'idna nohug alma ketlasa sabi, which means halacha lamaisa. There are those who are makbid on Tfilas Ezra, and it's a wonderful thing. But halacha lamaisa avada we're allowed to learn even without tefillah. How could we do that? Heichi alim Rabbi Yehuda levatel takanas Ezra. How could Rabbi Yehuda? He was a very holy man, but to be mevatel the takana of a navi, how could he do that? Yeshloimer the dilma savar the loitikun Ezra davar zeh. Maybe first of all he holds that it's not true. Ezra never made this takana. Inami hisne shekol misha roitz levatel yivatel. Ezra didn't make a takana that he said he wanted to be forever. He said, right now, for the time being, I want this takana to be. If anybody in the future sees that maybe this takana is not helpful anymore, they could be mavatlit. So it was built into the takana that if a future Rav sees that this is something that maybe is not helpful, he could be mavatlit.
I don't think Ezra was a navi.
He was a cipher, but didn't he write? Didn't he write part of the Tanakh?
I don't think so.
Ezra Shriver didn't write any part of the Nach. I thought he wrote some of the Nach. No,
He was. I think he came right after the Nevi'im. But there was a
who wrote Ezra?
It was over a lot overlap. Chage
So who
Zachariah
wrote Ezra and
Malachai.
Nehemiah?
What?
Who wrote Ezra and Nehemiah?
I don't know. But Chage Zachariah Malachai were the last of the Nevi'im, and Ezra came after them. Although there is a shita that holds he could have been one of those 3. I read that.
Okay, but even if not, it's still a kasha how Rabbi Yehuda, many years later could overrule that. So the B'chag of the Mutter could Shmoid Katan Inami, or could be even though Ezra made that takana, it was not accepted. Like Pashat Isurei B'Rab Yisrael, and you find that if someone makes a gzera and it doesn't take hold, then it's not mandatory, not binding. That they tried to aser shemen of a goy and it didn't stick; it was too much. The avagav, and that's why pas palter wasn't asered ultimately, because it was a gzera that the tzibur couldn't take. The avagav the mash mahasa, the Daniel gozer love. If it would have been Daniel who was gozer, lo yoyer Yehuda Nesiya. So it's mashma, even if it didn't take hold, even though it wasn't accepted. Yes, if there was a takana of a navi that was written in the pasuk, even though it wasn't proliferated, it wasn't accepted, it's still binding. It doesn't mention this in any psukim, and therefore we could say it wasn't accepted. But the Darish b'mishameshu midechsev v'yidatel avanecha v'samach le yoyim asher amadata malalon balakeri nasurin. Just like by Kabbalah Satorah, Abal Keri was Aser, who are in learning Torah, asmachta he. That's merely an asmachta. The Ezra Tikein, Ezra was a masakin. But Amar Mishamesu, Gabe ben Nayo, the Tover Geziza the Barda, he broke the ice to go into Toivel, but Nachas the Toivel, Loyla Divrei Torah. It wasn't the Gabi Torah. Nakati Ezra Lohava Elalecho Kulam Tahira. That was because he wanted it Kulam Tahira. So at the end of the day, Takon says it's Gavaltic, but it doesn't seem like it is mandatory. Although it is highly, highly recommended. Someone even told me that when he was looking into buying a house, on Carmichael, and the Alta Polish Yid who wanted to sell him now says, "They hose at the Anspur na Sachgeld. Darfst a vielen nicht tun für heiß Wasser und Stieb, weil kannst keinen in der Gitte mikve jede in der Früh." So you see, Takanas Ezra even saves you money. The Tika and Tefillah of Al-Kari and the Raisi, the Chsev Ishki Shitz makes okay. And tomorrow, he was Masakin Aphrodisiac. Asarit Varim Nemer Yerushalayim. Now we have a new Asarit Varim. We're listing off sets. We have a set of 10 things that were unique about the city of Yerushalayim. Now, the main driver between all of these items is that the point is that Yerushalayim was never given out to any Shevet. Even though part of Yerushalayim is Shevet Yehuda and part of Shevet Binyamin, but it wasn't really given to them officially. They don't really own it. It's really communal land that's shared by all of Klal Yisrael. Item number 1: Ein habayis cholotba. Normally, if you sell a house, and you don't redeem it for a year, the house goes permanently to the purchaser. That rule does not apply in Yerushalayim, and the Gemara will list the psukim to show that. If there's a murder in Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim will never bring an egla rufa. It will never be able to become an iranidachas. There's no batei arechaima. There's no nega babatim that applies in Yerushalayim. You're not allowed to have porches that stick out, which hover over public property in Yerushalayim. So Gzustoris is a porch. Aziz is just having a beam stick out a little bit from your house. You're not allowed to make garbage dumps in Yerushalayim. You're not allowed to make these special ovens with which they make lime. You're not allowed to have orchards and vegetable gardens in spice gardens in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim, except for rose gardens that were there in the times of the Nevi'im Rishayim. You're not allowed to raise chickens, which we already know why, because of Tumah. A mace may not remain in Yerushalayim overnight. That's why when sometimes I have Levi's in Yerushalayim even 11 o'clock at night, because you don't wait overnight. So let's go through these things one by one. A house that's sold there will never be permanently transferred to the Lekach. It's going to transfer over to the person who bought it forever. The problem is, Yerushalayim was never distributed to the Shvatim, and therefore you cannot say that there's a koina isai because it could never have possibly been purchased, because technically it would not have been a valid sale because it didn't belong to anybody. Because Savar lo nischalka Yerushalayim. Actually, if someone has an art scroll, I didn't see Rashi that explains how l'tzmisus l'koinos l'deiros of how that excludes Yerushalayim because it wasn't schalka. Is it from the koinosoi or is it from the deirosav? Does the art scroll explain exactly what the limud is? Moti, don't check your art scroll.
It says there's a dispute in Yuma regarding whether Yerushalayim was apportioned to Binyamin or Yehuda. Our Gemara holds that Yerushalayim was not apportioned, but that was instead designated as the temple city with its tribes having given the rights therein. Hence, Yerushalayim does not qualify for inclusion in the law of walled city houses.
Because
it states to the one who purchased it, and it is legally impossible to purchase a house.
Okay, so it's what I thought. You can't say Lakoina Oisoi because you can't buy something if there's no owner, if it's a communal property. Okay, that's what I was looking. So it's being died from the Lakoina Isai. Because someone sorry? So, someone from Midian is probably living there, but technically it wasn't his land. Right? The same way we live here, but it's really the land of the First Nations. You don't, Yerushalayim, the city of Yerushalayim never brought an Egla Rufa. And once again, Yerushalayim was never given to you. Yerushalayim, lo nischalko shvatim. Tosfos is a very interesting kasha about this, but I want to finish the Amid first, and then maybe we'll have a peek at Tosfos.
There's an important limud here. You don't want to buy rental property in Yerushalayim because it says, for that very reason, the Gemara Megillah rules that residents of Yerushalayim may not rent out their houses to pilgrims who come for the
regal. Right.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to charge rent.
So if you invest in Airbnbs in Yerushalayim, when Mashiach comes, you're going to be out of luck.
Well, never mind Airbnbs. Even if you buy, you don't get ownership of it.
Right.
No matter what, Yerushalayim cannot become an Nidachas to Chsiv or Recha. And again, Yerushalayim is Chalkal Shvatim. Ve'enim benegoyim nigga bottom don't apply to it. Chsiv Nesati nigga Tzaras beveis Eretz Achuzaschem. And again, if Yerushalayim is Chalkal Shvatim. Ve'emitzim bazizin exist stories. What's wrong with having things sticking out over your head when you're walking down the street? In Yerushalayim, we were very makbid on Tumah Tahira because there's Kahanim, there's Karbonis in Yerushalayim. And what happens is, what if there's a porch and there's a Kazais Munameh sitting on the ground under the porch? Now, anybody who walks under that porch will become Tomei because of Tumas oil. So it's too dangerous. And the same thing with anything that sticks out of a wall, it creates an oil, and anybody walking underneath it might become Tomei if there's a Mashu of Tumah there. What? If it's a tefach wide, yeah, and the tefach is 6 inches, yeah, so it's very common, yeah. If the oil atoma, another thing is mishum delisko oil regalim. Imagine if Ephraim alone is walking down Yerushalayim and he bangs his head on a porch that's a little low, right? It wouldn't typically happen to me because I'm way below them. We have a very tall guy walking down the street. He could bang into something that's sticking out of a wall that he might not have noticed. You cannot make garbage dumps in Yerushalayim mishum shkotzim, because then you'll have shkotzim, you'll have rodents and things that are tamei. So Krashi Darkan Ligadol Ba'ashba Umarbim Tuma Levishameshim Shom, they die there, and with Tamim Akochim Shubushalayim. So it's not good to have rodents running around. That's why you have cats. That's why you have cats and Eisenbachs there to keep the mice away. What? They took it out of Yerushalayim.
Maybe that's why they light the garbage cans on fire from time to time.
Oh, okay, good, yeah. They nice about kivshain. You can't make a kivshain mishum kutra, because what happens is asham shemashnur is a ugnayu. If you have a kivshain, there'll be smog that will actually blacken the walls of the buildings in the city. Then you see, smog was already an issue back then. Then oisin baginoy su pardesim. Why? Mishum sircha, because of smell. Why would ginoy and pardesim have a smell? Rashi says the first shot is it's not smell. It's asavim roim hagdelim sham. When you have these gardens, you have to constantly pull weeds. What are you going to do with the weeds? Vizarkin b'chutz, they throw them out, and it makes the roads dirty. I don't know. We learned that one of the takanas was that anybody can come and feed them to their animals, but I guess you don't want them thrown on the floor outside. You have to put manure there. And that creates a smell. As we learned a couple of days ago, that's just Kabbalah. So let's see what the Gemara expands on this. The Gemara does not expand. You're never allowed to raise a chazer. Where does this come from? When the Beis Chashmonai were fighting with each other, it's a question. Some sugis report it the opposite way. But one brother in this dispute was outside the walled city, and the other brother was inside the walled city. And I believe these were Yevonim, I think Rashi says. These were Yevonim Achim, no, maybe they were, maybe not, they're Yid.
They were from back home.
Okay.
They were in cahoots with the Romans.
I'm sorry?
The one outside was in cahoots with the Romans.
in cahoots with the Romans, but they weren't Romans.
He brought the Romans.
Aristobulus is a Greek name, so I guess he already had a Goyish name. And every day the people from inside the city would send down money to buy the animal that they needed for the carbon tamid. But you might learn to meet him. There was a Zakan Mamre outside. So he knew Greek, so he was able to communicate with the rulers there. Amalami told him, you're trying to take over the city, why in the world are you sustaining them? You're trying to squeeze out the crooks. Why are you sending in aid to Gaza? If you want to get rid of the Hamas, why do you constantly send them in the supplies? They need to continue fighting you. They're never going to fall. Therefore, as usual, but the response, the pig, Rashi, it's the derech that it wants to stop itself from being pulled. It'll push its hooves into the ground to anchor itself, which it did in the wall. And at that point, when this Daza Eretz Yisrael, Arba Meis Parsal, Arba Meis Parsal, create a tremendous tremor. At that point, because of what this man did, this horrible man did, they said, Or Ha'ish Sheyigadol Chazerim. Cursed is the man that will ever raise pigs. But Or Ha'adam Sheyalamid es Benoy Chachmas Shivanis. Yes. The Al-Oysa Shah Shaninu, and about that period of time, we also learned some terrible things happened. They didn't even have barley in Yerushalayim to be able to bring the carbon omer from, so they had to import it from a place which was far away from Yerushalayim. Ushtei alechem, which was wheat that was brought on Shavuos, mebikas ein sukkar, again, which was far away, was not in Yerushalayim. We'll save the next thing for tomorrow, but let's just quickly look at Tosfos. We have a couple of seconds. Tosfos asks a very important question, and there's two Tosfos. Also, Lo Yigadol Chazerim. Maybe we'll learn this first. Lo Yigadol Adam Chazerim. If I'm talking about Tosfos, typically the also last is Chori b'chol dvarim tmeim. You're not allowed to do business with any dvarim tmeim, not only Chazir. So, what's the big Isser? Can you tell me about Shvius? In Oisen Schoira, in the Velos of Trefos, or Perkal Shah Nami. Omer, Saide Chaya v'Oiv, Shenis Damnu Laminim Tmein, if non-kosher birds were found in their nets. Dafka is Damnu, only if they happened to have caught one, but they weren't targeting those, can they sell them? You're not allowed to try to trap non-kosher birds. Kididar Shasam, Yubav Yasin Yeh. Nami Dashinan, Sheket Silachem, Shalai Lasto Schoira Behen. The teacher Benatam, Tanu Dafka Bedover HaOmer Lachila. That you're not allowed to deal with treifa things, that's if your intended use for these treifa things are to eat them. But there's many other reasons why you would be megadol a behema. Maybe because you need the lard, and you're going to use the lard not as an ingredient in food, but you're going to use it for process. Then shari, that would be mutter. So that there's an overall prohibition to deal in treifas, that's if it's food, non-kosher food products. But when we're talking about having treifa animals for other purposes, that would be allowed. And of course, we know you're allowed to buy a horse, you're allowed to deal in horses. Why? Because they're used to do malacha, they're not used primarily to eat. Now, the thing is, all kosher shlachtos, they cut off the back of the animal and they sell it to the goy. So we're constantly selling Isurei Achilut to a goy. I'm not sure how that's allowed. Right. So I wonder how that works. Aren't you selling non-kosher? Could be you're not dealing in it. Could be you're dealing in kosher. The bigger problem would be the nevelas, no? The
bigger problem would be the nevelas. The back of the animal is not inherently treif.
The back of it is really kosher.
It's just it hasn't been shivered, but the nevelas, we sell them all the nevelas.
You're selling chaylev, and the chaylev is eaten by the goyim. So in the treif, it's not an issue. Then it's like nisdamnu laminim tmein. It's like you set up a net and a treif bird came in. So there you're allowed to get rid of it. But here, lechatchila, we're selling the chaylev I'm not sure how that works. I'm sure there's heter import, but it's just interesting what halach is. Okay, let's quickly take a look at the next isis. Well, Isis Shah, this is that terrible time where the pig's nails got stuck into the wall of the Yerushalayim. This is also interesting. Kula Mishni b'Menachos. This is a Mishnah Menachos Perek Mishmol. V'im Taimar v'Habi Mei Mordechai have a Ma'aseh Kedam Harsam Gemara. This was in the times of Mordechai, and Mordechai was long before this, which is the Churban Abayis. So Tosfos says an interesting thing at the end. Tosfos says that Venerary the Chal Oisan show you Bekin B'Ramazimu V'Lushaynais, people who knew everything, knew all the different languages. How you Nekron Mashal Mordechai. So Mordechai became a description for the type of person who knows everything. So he's got a Mordechai.
Renaissance man.
What's that?
In English, we call it a Renaissance man.
So it's a compliment to be called a Mordechai. Okay, so let's look at the Egla Ruba. We have still a couple of minutes. Zok Tosfos ve'edma Egla Ruba and Timer. Why do I need this special reason that Yerushalayim wasn't the Schalkel Shvatim? There's another even more compelling reason why there would be no din Egla Ruf in Yerushalayim. My iri mishum de Schalka, typically mishum de ist on the Mezel Basaruba de Alma. The Gemara in Bava Basra asks, I don't understand. Roy v'karev, what's other? The halacha is you have to measure which city is closest to the mace, right? But what if the city that's 100 meters from the mace has 10 people who live in it, and the city that's 101 meters from the mace has 10,000 people in it? You're still going to go Basar Karev when the people in the vicinity are from a different city? That was the Gemara's discussion. So the Gemara answered, you're right. The only time you do that, if it's Bein Harim and it's not, there's no big city anywhere. But you see, Roiv has a big consideration. So if that's the case, by Yerushalayim, where everybody's there, how could you know who should be responsible? The Avagav the Amar Hasam, the Yesheves Bein Harim and Loyas in Basaruba, the Yerushalayim Harim Savivla. So maybe then you don't go Basaroy. Because Makaim Hayu Yisrael Nechnasin v'Yotzin Law Lalois L'Regel. Yerushalayim, like it is today, is a massive train station. People are coming, people are going, and not necessarily just because the murderer was in Yerushalayim at the time is he a citizen of Yerushalayim. There's so many people, probably at any given moment in Yerushalayim, there are more visitors than there are locals. Not Rechela Samim, the Yud changes it to the Yud changes it to Dal Samim. It was a massive gateway. So how could you anyway take Egla Rufa? You don't know who's responsible, even if it was near Yerushalayim. There were neighborhoods in Yerushalayim. Only true inhabitants. There are neighbors that are not tourist traps, that are not overrun by tourists. Those places you would have a Rav Yisrael. Inami b'mecheskia, in the days of Cheskia, shakol Yisrael hayu b'Yerushalayim lo yiboyin l'schayir. Everybody lived in Yerushalayim. People weren't coming in and out. So in those periods of times, we have a pasuk that says, "Dafka if it's your city," but since Yerushalayim was loyd nischachol shvatim, there would be no din egla rufa in Yerushalayim. Okay, we'll stop here. A lot of interesting factoids we learned today, but we should be zoicha to the Gula Shlema. We should not have to suffer from any more casualties of Yiddish Kindlach in Eretz Yisrael. We should be zeicher to the Gula Shlema. Amen. Oh, today is the Yortzeit. I thought it was yesterday. Today is the Yortzeit of Baruch Sorotzkin, who's an Einkel of Live Sudis. He was the Shiva of Tells, was the Adam of one of the Finkels, and he was a big tzaddik. How do you know? Because it was Hushlam Shnoisov, his birthday, and his Yortzeit are Yud Gimel Adar, Yud Gimel Shvat, in the Shomesh Rav Eliyah. I didn't